Let's just sure. Hello everyone, this is Siskin Patna and welcome you all to the Hackmafest. And today we have the sweet and amazing Belle with us, who is going to cover up the. Okay, Belle, over to you.
Cool. Thank you so much for the introduction. Hi, everyone. I'm Belle. I am 17 this year. I'm from Malaysia. I'm super excited to be able to be sharing all of this with you guys. If I cut out at any point, please do let me know because sometimes my internet can be a little bit shaky. And today I'll be talking about introduction to designing websites. And the core of basically what we'll be covering is just what does it mean to be a designer, and here are some tips and tricks and stuff like that. So I will start sharing my screen. I have quite a long presentation to get through. I recommend you guys to keep yourself unmuted. Let's interact, let's talk, have fun conversations. Let's not make it a lecture because we don't like that a lot. Towards the end, we have a very practical thing for everyone to apply what you have learned. So please participate in that as well. And just to prep for that, like practical element of this, I'll be sending a Figma link. So figma.com is the platform that we'll be using to actually do the exercise or practice like designing and prototyping. So I would recommend you go there. You just need to create an account. It's completely free. You don't have to do that right now. We can do it together later on, but that's just a quick thing if you want to do so. Okay. I will be sharing my screen. Are you guys able to see my screen? Okay, cool. So please do so please do keep yourselves unmuted and let's interact. So here is introduction to designing websites. What this workshop will be covering, what is website design, basic rules of website design, introduction to visual hierarchy and layout, introduction to responsive designs, different types of website designs, and a design together. So as you can see, we have quite a lot to get through. So I'll be jumping right into the workshop. First of all, what is website design? I would say that website design is sometimes deciding the layout, appearance, and content of the site. So what does the site look like? Where are the information placed? What actual things are you showing on the website? What's the copy, which is what words are you using and what exact things are you writing? So that would be a part of website design. It's also about creating low and high fidelity prototypes. So low and high fidelity prototypes, the difference between that is basically something like this gray box would be a low fidelity prototype, while something with font images and words and stuff like that, that's a high fidelity prototype. And we normally experiment with low fidelity prototypes first to see if the concept works, and then we move on to high fidelity prototypes to basically be able to quickly iterate and keep designing and figuring out what we want to do. We also have making strategic decisions for a purpose. And this is something I will iterate throughout this entire workshop. Within website design, it's not only about making something look good. It's often about how can I use my designs to make a user do something that we want them to do? Because most websites have a purpose. Actually, all websites have a purpose. It's just what the purpose is. For example, a Hackmafest website its purpose would be to ask you to either register for the hackathon or maybe sign up for something or volunteer as a mentor or volunteer as a judge. We are selling Hackmafest, right? So how can you use designs to best convey what Hackmafest is and convert a visitor to the website into someone that is interacting with you? So that's kind of what website design is about as well. It is also about using, yes, yeah, please let me know. Okay, I'll go a little bit slower. So it is also about using designs to convey certain emotions, and conveying emotions means how can I make the user, but when I say user, I mean anyone that visits your website. How can I make a user feel what I'm talking about, or what am I trying to convey, basically? Sometimes website design is about the actual development of the front end of the website. So that's coding. And sometimes also about user research and testing. So that could be gathering data, sending out surveys, asking questions, doing research and like compiling generalized research to apply to your designs. There's quite a lot. And also like getting the a lot of those like iterative and research based stuff that can fall under website design too. And one thing is also like website design is not only about the visual, but it's also about the interactions. And what do I mean by that? What happens when you click on a button? When I scroll, what sort of effects are there? What is a user's flow? Flow means like the journey from when they visit your website to where you want them to end up. Like what's that flow? That's part of website design too. And it's a whole lot more. So like it's whatever you want to define it to be, as long as it falls under building and planning out and designing a website. So that's one thing. Today, I'll be mostly covering visual website design because it's impossible to cover everything, but I just want to like share this a little bit so you can maybe think a little bit more about how you are approaching website designs. Okay. And so like, please let me know if I have to clarify anything. I'd be happy to do so. Okay. So first of all, let's cover a few rules of website design. The first one is be consistent. What do I mean by be consistent? Well, consistency means doing something in a similar manner and like repeatedly. If I brush my teeth every single morning, I am consistent with that, and that's being consistent, right? So basically we want to do the same within website design. And why consistency? Consistency is useful because it helps a user, which is someone that visits your website, know what to expect. And then you're like, okay, why do I want them to know what to expect? Well, users don't have a lot of patience, one, and users want something from you. If they don't know what's happening on this website, they're gonna click away. Because like when I go to a website, I either have a purpose or I want to know what the website's about. But if I can't find what I'm looking for, or I don't know what I'm expecting, then I am probably going to leave the website, which people sometimes call bouncing. And so that's why we want to be consistent. And an example of consistency would be repeating components. So I know that a lot of you are developers, and even if you're not, don't worry. A component is like one subsection of an entire thing, right? And when we're building, sometimes we use components to repeat elements, and you can reuse components throughout your entire code as well. And it's the same exact thing within design. We want to create components and groups of things that are very similar so that we can repeat it. And by repeating it, our users understand and they know what to expect, basically. So that's why you want to carry consistency. Although I will say this again and again throughout the workshop, rules in website design are not actual rules. They're just guidance for things that we might recommend, but it's completely fine to break the rules. And like, sometimes you need to break the rules for things to work, right? Like this is not a strict yes or no. It's just in a general sense. If you want to have website design, it might be good to consider consistency. Okay, next thing is intuitive. So what does it mean to be intuitive? It links to consistency, and it means that the user knows what to expect and they understand. For example, if a button does not look like a button, you're not going to know it's a button and you're not going to click on it. If a button looks like a text, why would you click on the text, right? So that's the biggest example the simplest example I can think of. Something like a slider. If a slider does not look like a slider, they're not going to hover over the slider because they don't know what it is. And like intuitiveness doesn't exist only within website design. It exists in product designs too. Like for example, I have this mug right here. If this mug didn't have this top, or like it looked some other shape, maybe I wouldn't know it's a mug. And when I go to a shop, maybe I won't buy it if I'm looking for a mug because I don't know it's a mug. So it's the exact same sense, carries within website design. Okay, avoid clutter. This one I hope is a pretty general rule. And that is, we want to avoid clutter. And clutter is basically when you put too much information on the page. If we look at the left, which is Hack Club, I love the website. I will 100% recommend you guys use the website to take a look at what I think is great design. Does exactly what you wanted to do. And like, it's just generally very clean. And so that's why I put this example right here. You want to avoid clutter. And by avoiding clutter, you can really bring focus into information that matters and things on your website that matter. And so if you look at the right, like I can't really find anything in here. There's just so much going on. But on the left, I know exactly what to do. They're like step 1, step 2, step 3. So that's kind of what we want. We want to avoid clutter and only focus on the important information. Because remember, your user, 1, has no patience, 2, has no time because there's too many things on the internet. Like, so that's kind of what we want to do. And we just want to make the experience as easy as possible for the user. Next thing is Hicks law. Hicks law, something like it goes something like that applied within like Hicks law applied within website design goes something like the more choice you give someone, the more time they'll take to make that decision, and then the less likely they're going to make a decision. And so that's like, if you think about it, right? Like if you have a ton of clothes at home, like you'll take longer to decide what to wear as opposed to if you just have like a pair of shirt and jeans or something, right? But because you have this additional time to wear, sometimes you might be like, oh my God, I don't want to go out anymore because I don't know what to wear. But if you only had a pair of shirt and jeans, you're just like, okay, cool, let's just grab that and let's go out. That's like a very generalized example, but I hope it kind of like reminds you what I'm trying to convey here, which is when you have something really important that's the main focus of your website, don't convolute it or like don't just muddle it with all the other options. Hack Club, once again, Hack Club's main goal is to get you to start coding clubs around the world. So even though they have a Slack community, they have a like fiscal sponsorship thing, they have a ton of other really cool things, they don't tell you right at the front page. Like once you land on that page, the first thing is just to apply for a club. So that's the key thing. What's the main thing you want your user to do? And then convey that only instead of giving them a ton of options. However, there, like I said before, in design, there's always exceptions to the rule. An exception is something like YouTube. YouTube's whole point is to give the user the power to choose. So like if YouTube only gave you one video per page, that would make no sense at all. Like you can't even choose what you want to watch. And so in this case, having a lot of choices is really optimal. So next thing, design above the fold. And what does above the fold is, it basically means what the user first sees when they land on the page. Okay, actually, let's try and do like a little case study thing. So we don't get bored of the slides. I'm gonna try screen sharing, like a Hackmafest website, and let's take a look at what the above the fold is, so that we can do some live dissection, because I think that's always more fun. So okay, I hope this is okay. Is it loading? Oh my God, that's such a cute loading animation. Okay, guys, props to whoever thought of that loading animation. That is extremely, I love it. So while we wait for it to load, above the fold basically means everything that you see right now. I do not scroll, I do not do anything, and I am just seeing whatever I am first seeing. And so that's basically above the fold. Okay, it's taking quite a while to load. Maybe my internet is okay. Actually, let's not do this because my internet might be glitching out or something. But basically, above the fold means anything that you see straight away. And no scrolling. That applies on the phone, on your iPad, on your tablet, on any device you want. The first thing the user sees without having to interact with it is above the fold. And you're like, okay, why do you want to design above the fold? Well, you want to design above the fold because, guys, think back. How many times have you opened a website and just clicked out of it without reading anything? Do you guys do that? I do that all the time. Like I click into an article and I'd be like, click out. Or I click into this and I'm like, okay, not interesting. So like, think of yourself as a user. I want that first thing on the website without me having to do anything to just be like, oh my God, I want to read on. That's so interesting. Or wow, this applies to me, right? So that's why designing above the fold is important. We want to keep all the like key things just like attract. It's similarly in writing, like your teachers, I'm sure if you guys have done like any sort of like writing class or like creative writing, they always say start with a hook. So like you want to attract. exactly the same thing. You'll see that like designing websites is a lot like just applying real life stuff onto the web. Like it's not some mystical thing that's like, oh wow, completely new. You apply same concepts across the board, stuff you've already learned in school and life and like all the other things, and you just kind of think of yourself as a user and how you want to interact with this website and then design that. Okay, I'm going a little bit slow, so I'll try and speed up a little bit. But usability over design. And this is what I meant initially when I said website design is not all about making something look good. Websites, I believe, this is my definition, you guys don't have to agree with it, but I think that website design is about, well, some people on the internet, like some people define it this way as well, but I personally like believe in that definition that website design is about making your users do something and like converting users into some sort of like what your goal is basically. And so in that case, like if your website succeeds in doing that, it's a good website design. Even if it's not the most visually appealing thing, if your website achieves that goal, it is good. And the way a website can achieve the goal of turning a user into maybe a potential customer or someone that you're interacting with, anything like that requires usability, because if a user doesn't know how to interact with your site, they don't get any information, they're not going to become your client, they're not going to become your customer. And so that's why usability is always prioritized over design. However, see, there's always a big however. If the whole purpose of your website is to showcase the design of the website, then in that case, design over usability, because that's the whole point. So like I said, it comes down to purpose and like why you're building the website. And but this is just a general rule for most of the websites I think you'll find yourself building. Okay. Introduction to visual hierarchy. I'm going to zoom through this, but this Z thing is normally how a reader reads elements on the screen if they read from like the Western style stuff. So like you know how books, you normally go left to right and down. That's how users read elements on the screen. And the reason this is important is because you want to keep the most important information that hook right at the top left corner. Like if you keep the hook all the way at the bottom, like your user's not going to see that yet. And if they get bored of all the other schmadazzle that you have going on, they're not going to read it. So that's just like a quick reminder of how a user reads elements on the screen, and it can help guide design decisions. And this is basically visual hierarchy. And visual hierarchy is basically about changing size, color, contrast, repetition, proximity, white space, and a few other things in order to highlight what is important. Because hierarchy is like first, second, third, fourth, fifth, right? It tells the user the importance of things, and you convey that through all the various things you see on the screen. So for example, with size, a large text, more important. It's like you know, like if they're like, I don't know, at my school, it's like the more important you are, the bigger your photo is. It's kind of similar to that. Like a large text is equals to more important. And with color, not necessarily darker, but better contrasting colors equals more important, and less contrasting colors equals less important. And like this is just something that like you innately recognize because your eyes are just drawn to it. If there's a really large text, you're going to see it first before a small text. If there's a really bright color, you're going to see it first before a small, like a more dull color. So that's the general thing. There's also contrast, and contrast is basically like using difference in colors to bring attention to something. Repetition and proximity is a really good example of social icons. So if you guys ever like take a look at social icons, you'll see that normally like your Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, email, anything, they're normally grouped together, and they're like, that's repetition and proximity. And what it tells you is that these things are related. They are related. And so that's why we call them social icons. If you had an Instagram icon at your top left, a Facebook icon somewhere in the middle of your page, a Twitter icon like somewhere else, one, your user's not going to know where to find things. And two, like, what is it telling your user? Because like they would expect for these things to be together because in their mind, they are similar. And so repetition and proximity has that effect. And like there's also a lot of other things, like if you're giving people multiple options that are similar, you put them together. So like grouping elements together uses repetition and proximity. I would recommend, if you guys are interested in visual hierarchy and graphic design and stuff like that, to definitely delve deep into this, because it can greatly impact the way you make design decisions. I mean, it impacted me a lot. Oh, by the way, quick warning before we get into the rest of it. I just want to say that like all of this is just research that I gathered plus some of my personal experience. So please don't take this word, like everything here, just like, oh, it's the truth or like anything. Just more like sharing, I guess. So that's just the thing I want to say before we move on. I will be skipping the layout component of this because this is just a quick showing of standard layouts, a single, double columns, asymmetrical, and grid. And normally we like to just take a look at common layouts just because like you can get started easily. Like you don't have to think about where you want to place your stuff because you just follow a layout, but you don't have to. So if you guys are interested, I'll be dropping the link for this slide so you can take a look at it. But I think we can look into responsive designs next. Okay. By the way, before I jump in, do you guys have any questions? I've been rambling for like 30 minutes. But I'd be happy to answer any questions that you guys have or anything. Okay, am I talking too fast? Am I making sense? Because I love to just kind of like, you know, see what pace you guys want me to work on to really better benefit you guys.
I guess you're doing perfect, Belle. Don't worry.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So let's talk about responsive designs. What is responsive design? It is basically a design approach to create content that adjusts smoothly to various screen sizes. And why do we want to create responsive designs? First of all, I did not know the statistics until I was researching data for the workshops. And turns out 68.1% of all website visits in 2020 came from mobile devices. Like, okay, cool. Well, that means that most of your users are probably going to visit your website at some point from their mobile phones. And that is important. Why? Well, I know that most developers design on the computer or laptop or some sort of like device that's like large screen, right? Which means that if you're not designing for a mobile screen too, when your users look at your website through mobile, they're not going to have a great experience because your website's not responsive. It's not adjusting to the way and conveying that same purpose on a smaller screen. That's why we want responsive designs. Secondly, it's SEO friendly, and that's search engine optimization, which basically means that your website is more discoverable when people look for it. And the third thing is because it's cheap and easy to implement. So responsive designs are a little bit more work. However, if you include responsive designs in your design phase and then your development phase, and you don't have to go back and rewrite that whole thing, responsive designs is actually a really, really, really good way to just cover all of your bases, and it doesn't take that much more effort. You just gotta incorporate it within your design and development phase, I guess. Okay, so let's talk about some tips for responsive designs. First of all, mobile first. It means design for a mobile first and then scale up. Reason for that, there's two main reasons. First of all, on mobile, you show less information because there's just less screen to play with. Like I don't know, I don't have my phone with me, but like a mobile's probably like, I don't know, like 1/6 or 1/8 the screen size of my laptop. And so that means that when you gotta squeeze that much information into such little things, you're more concise and you know what's important and you can prioritize. And so that's the first thing of why you design mobile first. And second thing is really from a design perspective, it's always easier to add elements than to remove elements. So if you design mobile first, then you can easily scale up by moving two content to one column into two columns, into three columns, for example, and a lot of other stuff. So that's why design mobile first. Secondly is fluid grid. So first of all, what is a grid? A grid is when you divide something into like basically even boxes that like boxes of even size. And when you're using a fluid grid, oh, okay. So designing with a fluid grid is basically meaning that when you design, you divide your things into grids. For example, this screen, if I divide it into, let's see. Okay, this might be a little bit hard to divide into grids. Okay, I think we can do it. So let's try annotating. Okay. I've never done this before, I think. Okay, give me a quick second. Let's try it. So if I want to divide this into grids, I would probably do something like, oop. Okay, guys, I know I said even boxes, but it doesn't always have to be, but something like this. Okay, so if we take a look at this, this grid, you're like, okay, that's like a weird thing to be, but let me show you how I would make this, how I would turn this into a mobile friendly design, because this is obviously not mobile friendly right now. So I have box 1, box 2, box 3, box 4, and box 5. And the way I would do it is, let's say I have a, in purple, this is going to be my mobile thing. Okay. What I would do is I would put the title box 1, and then I would tile box 2, I will tile grid 2, 3, and 4 into one column. So now I just have like title and like literally one single column of a ton of boxes. And then I would add, maybe box 5 would be something here, but I'll see how much space I have. Or it would be a little like menu option right here. And then I will obviously my logo. Okay, so I am not the best at drawing with the drawing with like, okay, drawing with the trackpad, but I hope that kind of illustrated the point, which is when you design in a grid, it can make it really easy to make things responsive. So that's just like a tips. Third thing is fluid development. So like I mentioned, sometimes website design is also includes the actual front-end development. And with that, just make sure that when you're designing, instead of using fixed pixels, you can use something like percentage, viewer width, viewer height, EM, REM, for example, to make things really a lot more responsive. And so that like, it's just easier so that you don't have to media query every single thing. And media query is basically when you like, when you're designing, if you do like raw HTML and CSS, you can use something like media query to basically set like check for the width and the check for the width of the screen, and then apply a different CSS property. So that's fluid development, 100% recommend that one. And then also use SVG. So that kind of piles into fluid development, wherein SVGs are scalable vectors, which means it will look great regardless of which screen you're on, as opposed to something like a PNG, which might get really pixelated when it's on a large screen. Also prioritize. So like I mentioned, on mobile, you have a lot less space to work with. And so you want to pick information that's really, really important and know what those are. Last thing is design for 3+ devices. Actually, I don't follow that rule myself. I'm lazy and I normally design for 2 devices, but that's bad design. Oh, I won't say it's bad design practice. I say there can be a better design practice, which is basically designing for 3 different devices, because at like the screen width when you are at mobile and when you are on a laptop, it actually has a very big difference, and the tablet's right in the middle. And so if you design for all 3, it can obviously have a lot smoother interactions and transitions, which increases the responsiveness of your website. Okay, so I hope you guys kind of got some of the points there. Like I mentioned, if you need me to repeat anything, please let me know. Okay, let's move into website design styles, and I promise I'll stop talking and then we can actually design some stuff together. Okay, so when designing the style of the website, we want to do 3 things. think about the purpose of the site. Super important. Said this throughout the entire workshop. Think about the purpose of the website. Secondly, first, and then also the corresponding vibe. For example, if the purpose of your website is to convince this like big shot investor to like buy your product or like invest in your company or something, like you want to tailor towards them. So maybe not make your entire page crayons unless that's what the investor likes, right? You want to think about what the purpose is and what sort of message you want to send. So that also relates to like who your user is and your target audience and all that stuff. Secondly, is type and amount of content that you will be on the page. That's really important actually. So if you want to do a image heavy design, but the whole thing is a blog sort of style, like if it's a blog and you want to do an image heavy website design, how's that going to work? Like if you don't have any room for text, but then the whole purpose of the website is to have a ton of text, then that design might not necessarily work out. So like that's a thing to keep in mind. And then the last thing, and that's one super important. Think about the resources and skill set of your developers. And if that developer is you, think about your own skill set. I'm not saying that like you should never like push yourself outside of your comfort zone, because that's definitely a must do for all developers. But also like if you don't really know how to code and then you suddenly want to do like a website design with like crazy interactions and stuff like that, maybe take it one step at a time. And there are things that like the web is limitless, right? There's just so many things that you can do with it, but like you need to have the necessary skill set to actually build something as well. So that's just something to keep in mind. But I will not recommend that you just like not design something because you think, oh, it's unbuildable. Ask for help. Communities, like for example, like with Hackmafest, like obviously you guys have access to mentors and like all these amazing communities and stuff like that. Like these are resources that can help you, but just something to keep in mind. Okay, let's jump right into style. Okay, first of all, within style, all of these names are unofficial names for things. They are websites I commonly see, and I picked an example, and then I was like, this looks like it has this name. That's how the names came by. So, take the names, like just forget about the names, just take a look at the content, I hope. First of all is minimalism. And minimalism is generally when you strip it down to its core. So you don't have a lot of things happening. Generally, it's like one or two colors and like some images. It's just a mix of things. And, like this is minimal. I think minimalist designs are great. They really put the emphasis on like the core of what you're trying to convey, and they're very elegant too. So minimalism is a design style that I actually like quite a lot, and I practice myself as well. Secondly, it's gradients. So within gradient designs, the key thing is obviously the fact that it has a gradient, and a gradient can look like this. It could be a linear gradient, a circle gradient, a ton of different gradients, doesn't matter. And with gradients, nowadays it's pretty popular to do dark gradients. So they have like dark faded gradients that like are interactive and move around and stuff like that. Quite pretty. And I think gradient style designs are really cool because they're really artistic and they really grab your attention because it's literally just colors, and colors normally grab attention. And one thing to note with gradient designs, however, is to think about contrast. Your gradient design should not make it so that they can't read your text. So make sure that you have good contrast, and that affects what colors you choose for your gradient, for example. Next thing, dribble design. This one is okay, I'm not sure if you guys have heard of Dribble, but if you haven't, it's like https dribble.com, and it's basically a site where mostly designers showcase websites that they designed. And I call it the Dribble design because most websites that you see on Dribble look like this, like the actual Dribble site itself. And this is similar in Airbnb and stuff like that. And I normally characterize them by like really clean designs. They have like small border radius, some sort of like illustration things. And in general, I think it's really, really good. I think that Dribble, I call it a Dribble design. You can obviously tell it's not a formal thing, but I think Dribble designs are great because they look modern, they look clean, and they have just a really great flow that avoids clutter. Like Dribble designs are very like clutter free. However, one thing to note is obviously because a ton of people see these designs on a daily basis, and you see across a lot of popular websites as well. If you just use if you design your site according to something that looks like this, it might make it not stand out as much, because like it can look like a design that they've seen before, because it is like a pretty popular design that people like to mimic. So that's something to keep in mind, but that shouldn't stop you from experimenting with this. And if there's a style that you like, definitely go for it. But that's definitely not the design style too. And then the next thing is bold. And bold, I normally characterize it by like something that's just like shocking or jarring in your face. Like with this text, like it's so big, like wait, you don't need it to be this big, but I think it's awesome. I think bold designs, they have personality, and they speak some, they really convey a vibe, they convey its importance. And with bold designs, it's important to like know what exactly you want to highlight and stuff like that, but I think it's a pretty good example of what I mean by bold design. Next thing is product centric design. And that one's pretty self-explanatory. It means product at the center of it. And by the way, this product-centric design, just because this product's at the center, doesn't mean that all product-centric websites have their product in the center. But product-centric websites do build around selling that product itself. So it probably means a lot of product images, or a lot of like things talking about the product, and like it just kind of showcase. And that's product-centric designs. And I actually think that this website is freaking amazing. Like you would think that like, okay, someone wants to really sell mango juice, but okay, good for you. I love the website. And a lot of like other product-centric design websites I've seen are like car websites. Quite often have this like really slick car that goes, and then they just like, when you scroll, they spin the car and then they give more details about it. Love it. So that's product-centric websites, professional websites. And I want to clarify this. Professional doesn't have one look. It doesn't mean blue, black equals professional, or no, like there's a lot of different ways in which professional can be conveyed. But for me, in the most, I guess, rudimentary or like most basic sense of when I think of professional, it's something like this Microsoft website. It's clean, not too much colors, just enough information when you need it, very professional and controlled language. Like everything just looks like it's where it needs to be. And that's what I would call a professional website. So if that's the vibe you're going for, definitely grab that. And also illustration. So illustration heavy websites build the websites around illustrations, a ton of color, like a ton of like animations and like moving parts, and nowadays they also have like 3D illustrations and stuff like that. So illustration based websites normally have, like, I don't know if they even have photos. Some not have photos, some don't, but the illustration is really built into the website. So it's not just like a random illustration somewhere, it's really built and embedded within the site. And you will see that through repeated elements and stuff like that. Finally, newspaper, and this one's pretty special. You really only ever see it in newspaper and magazine sites, but basically this sort of like design is like, it gives you like a few important things and then some other options you can pick from. And this is generally what it looks like. There are obviously like a lot more sort of like design styles, but these are just a few that I want to talk about today. Okay, so let's design together. Wow, that's been 45 minutes of rambling. Okay. Do you guys have any questions before we jump right into this? Okay, I will take that as a no, and we can move in. So I see that we have 28 people here, so excluding me, that's 27. So I hope that at least all 27 of you will be able to join us as we design together. You don't have to showcase it, but I would recommend that you guys do showcase it towards the end. So let's just see what happens. So first of all, let's design a site together. One, picture that you are now a freelance designer and just landed your first client. So congratulations, first clients are always super excited. So here's a little bit more about your client. Their name is Amini, and about them, they are a student activist that focuses on policy changes for climate change. And what's the purpose of the website is basically to promote Amini so that users can get to know about what they have done and then engage with them in manners that will be described in the case files. So time to go grab your case files. I will be sending this link in the chat so that we can all do that. So let's grab a case file. By the way, if you really don't want to do the exercise, no worry at all. But no worries at all. But I would just really recommend it because I think it's pretty important to be able to, put the things that you've learned into practice. I hope you guys learned something, and just, it's always fun to try design a new website. So let's do this. I will be sharing the presentation in the chat as well so that we can take a look. So once you do that, I will actually run through the community file with all of you so that we can, okay, let's take a look at this. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen again, but I'll run through a quick dissection and then you guys can take it and own the whole thing. So first of all, you have a little bio section right here. It's supposed to tell you a little bit more about your client to maybe help you frame the way you want to take a look at this design. So that's just one thing. And then the client is looking for a site that's professional. So that's one thing to note. We'll highlight their personal achievements and we'll prompt people to two things. Speak to them about at different engagements and then also work with them to plan out policies for the environment. So those two things are really important because remember what I said at the beginning, you want to convert a user into someone that does something. These are the two things that your client wants your user to do. So think about these two things when you're designing. How can I always get the user to just do these two things towards the end? And then your task is to design a single page website that fits all the goals that Amini has. And also, here's a proposed methodology. Decide on a color palette and style, and then decide on the most important content you want to highlight, because know what you want to put on your site. And then you will know what sort of layout is most suitable, and then start designing and keep iterating. This is not going to be a 20 minutes. Well, it can be a 20 minutes thing if you want it to be, but it doesn't have to be a 20 minutes thing. Play around with it for as long as you want to. And I would just, you guys got this, but this is a few things. And then some resources, you do not have to use the resources here, but more photos. Fun fact, this person, I don't know who they are at all. I found a photo on Unsplash and I was like, whoa, this person looks cool. And then I was like, wait, do they have more photos? And then turns out that they did, which means you can actually pick more photos if you feel like they might be more appropriate for your site. Secondly, it's color palette generator. So this color palette generator is really helpful. It's called Coolers, and maybe you can help use it to decide on the style of your design. And then also there's fonts. So if you go to fonts.google.com, you can download a ton of really cool fonts and web fonts as well if you want to experiment with that. If not, a few very classic ones are Inter, Helvetica New, Poppins sometimes. Like there are a number of different things, but I personally love Helvetica New right now. That's my latest obsession. But yeah, so if y'all should definitely check this out. And then some websites for inspiration. So like I mentioned, Dribble is a site where you can find really cool designs. There's also awards, which is like design competition kind of. And there's also Behance, which is also another platform for looking at sites. So I am going to stop talking right now. I will drop the link once again in the chat, and please just open it and duplicate it. If you do not have an account, you can create a Figma account really easily. And I'm gonna leave an option open. So right now we can have breakout rooms. I will be opening a breakout room right now, and then I am offering to jump into the breakout room with anyone that needs help with this. We can stay on the call for, I think, about 20 more minutes, and feel free to drop off as you want. This is the end of the formal section. This is just the rest of it. It's like a code along, design along together. I am willing to jump into a breakout room with anyone that wants one-on-one help with your designs, wants to talk about anything, needs help with Figma, like send me a DM and then we'll jump into a breakout room together. And yeah, that's basically the offer. And thank you so much once again to Hackmafest for letting me do this. I hope you guys all learned a little bit of something. And yeah, okay, thank you. Also, I'll screen share some music. Okay, I will be leaving to a breakout room right now, but if y'all need me, do join the breakout room. At any pace, do work within yourself, and like I will be back as soon as I can. Cool. Hope happy designing.